Ithinar's Bloom by H. Jane Harrington. Chapter 22. Vambrace of Obsidian. The road less traveled is so for good reason. Master Kezias. Vaughn considered the two proposals with gravity, but no clear direction was forthcoming. Some prince I am, he thought, if I cannot make so simple a decision. When Keir asked his opinion, Vaughn rose and regarded the horizons in both directions. Scilio's suggestion to continue northward was appealing for its brevity, but he was likely encouraging the path for the multitude of anticipated women. Despite its swiftness, that option would leave them at the mercy of the keepers, who would have expected Vaughn to maintain his course. Keir's plan, on the other hand, would add weeks to the journey. It meant fewer towns and people, and much more water to cross. I don't know. Both plans sound reasonable, but Without preamble, Vaughn was suddenly propelled backward into his own mind. It felt as though his brain was being sucked into a whirlpool, imploding upon itself. The world around him turned grayish-blue. Scilio and Keir were gone, replaced by a mist that hung on fuzzy shadows. Vaughn called out to his guardians, but his voice seemed to vanish into the haze. "You are in mortal danger," a deep voice barked from behind. Vaughn spun around to see a figure emerge from the shadows. The man was tall and imposing, and his features were obscured but for piercing green eyes. "Who are you?" Vaughn asked. "You are in mortal danger," the figure repeated. "Follow your path east to Healy Lake and Aqualine. The wetlands shelter the answers you seek." He retreated into the shadows. "Wait," Vaughn called. "I must have your name." If the man answered, Vaughn did not hear it. Yet, as the hulking figure vanished from sight, Vaughn spied a vambrace around his forearm. It was like the Luminaire Guardian's arm guard, but this one was different. It was black as obsidian. Keir was frantic. Vaughn was being attacked somehow, and she could do nothing to protect him. Neither she nor the popinjay boasted talent in the healing form of psionics, so there was no way they could fight an adversary of the mind. All they could do was stare at Vaughn helplessly. "Any ideas?" Keir asked. Scilio shook his head, his face streaked for the first time with worry. Then, quick as a blazer bolt, color flooded Vaughn's cheeks and he blinked his eyes into focus. "Vaughn?" Keir probed nervously. "Talk to me." "I had a vision," he said as Keir and Scilio helped him upright. "We go to Healy Lake and Aqualine." Keir exchanged glances with Scilio. "Did you hit your wenching head? Aqualine's in the opposite direction from Krylia." "And Healy Lake? That's in the wetlands, is it not?" Scilio asked. "Whatever could you be seeking in such an isolated region of the world? I can sing you many tales about the barbarians there. I've heard they will eat your flesh from your skin and weave your hair into their baskets." "Still, we must go. That is our path," Vaughn said resolutely. He laid out the vision in detail. "What if Galvatine's leading you right where he wants you? How do you know this ain't a trap?" Keir asked, lacing her voice with warning. "I don't. However, I trust the man in the vision. He was a guardian, Keir. He had the vambrace." "But you said it was black. What in the wench and furies does that mean?" Keir asked. The three shared a moment of uneasy silence. Vaughn finally spoke. "This is my decision. We go to the wetlands." "Alas, fair maidens will be scarce in the dismal swamps, I imagine," Scilio lamented. If Keir had entertained the notion that her sleep memories would yield in the presence of company, she was sorely mistaken. Her sleepy brain didn't seem to care that others were about. Each night thrust her into the past anew, and while she didn't always remember which horrible chapter had played out on the midnight stage of her mind, the morning always dawned with the knowing that it had. Kiriana stood, bathed in blood, staring in horror at the grisly scene before her. Her eyes scanned the vicinity and fell to rest on a prostrate golden form, stark and contrasting against the crimson ground. She stumbled in a daze to Mirhana's side and pulled the slave into her arms. There was no breath nor tremor, only a shredded, lifeless shell. Keir jerked awake, trembling, and sat up sharply in her bedroll. As she fought to control ragged breathing, her eyes fell to her palms. She could almost see the blood covering them, as though it had transcended time just to torment her. She stared at her hands for several heartbeats. Would the bloodstains ever wash themselves from her mind? The creepy sensation of staring eyes teased her senses, and Keir glanced up to locate their owner. She found him in Vaughn, who lay silently in his bedroll across the dwindling fire. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Keir didn't know how long he'd been watching, but her self-consciousness threw her into a foul mood. The torment of her soul was none of Vaughn's concern. That he'd glimpsed a bit of her weakness was like putting a burr under her saddle. She instantly felt vulnerable and ornery. "I'm fine," Keir growled. "If you're that wide awake, why don't you get off your ass and relieve Skillio from his watch? Pull your weight around here." Vamsi scalded by her acidic tone. "I'm sorry, you were... I didn't..." Whatever he had intended to say, he never finished. "You're right. I'll go sit the rest of the watch." Vaughn kicked away his tangled bedroll and started for the wooded lookout where Skillio was perched. Keir scowled. She suddenly felt guilty for baring her claws. The truth was that Vaughn had been pulling his weight. She simply had no shield against his kindness. Gods, but she was terrible with people. Dawn was only 2 hours away by the reckoning of the stars. She would not be able to sleep again this night. "Wait, Stick. We're all awake now, so we might as well head out." "Are you sure you're ready? There's still a few hours until dawn if you want to rest longer. You didn't get much last night." "I'm fine," Keir said, fighting the urge to lash out again. Just how much were her dreams betraying? She prayed that she hadn't been talking in her sleep. Let's weigh anchor. The market town of Bahalia was bustling, and Keir would have preferred passing it by. Skillio, however, needed to restock his quiver, which was near empty due to their battle the past week. Keir and Vaughn waited for him outside of town, expecting the guardian to be gone for several hours. Much to Keir's surprise, however, he was not long in returning, and seemed anxious to issue a report. "So, what is this official news you have for me, Toma?" Vaughn asked, taking a seat. "There's a midsummer festival in Bahalia. The town is alive with sweet mead, willing women, and captivating song. It's a bit of the heavens right here for the taking." "Thank you for that informational bulletin, messenger boy," Keir grumbled. "Now what's your official news?" "Why, that is the news. The festival looks delightful, Vaughn. You simply must see the traveling theater troupe. The carriage was almost 2 stories high. They're presenting Caskets for Serenar. I've been dying to see that production," Skillio exclaimed. Vaughn nodded his enthusiasm. "The lead actress is a flame-haired tart of the highest order. Her eyelashes are as long as my bowstring, truly. And the way her dress caresses her voluptuous form." Skillio feigned a dramatic swoon. "Ambria per something. I wish I could remember the rest of her name. I was rather occupied with details that seemed more important at the time." He cupped his hands and traced the outline of a woman's curves in the air before him with dreamy stars in his eyes. "She'll be famous one day, indubitably." Vaughn's eyes widened. "Ambria? Ambria Persimmons? Bright green eyes and red ringlet curls?" Skillio's head bobbed emphatically. "You've witnessed the splendor of her talents?" "Well, sure. She and I starred opposite in Hollowhaven Chronicles last season in Grindley," Vaughn announced through a spreading grin. "You lucky wencher, you," Skillio breathed. "Perhaps you can get us backstage. You knew her well?" "I did get to know her rather intimately," Vaughn admitted, running a hand through his hair. "She was my first—" He stopped and looked abruptly at Keir, abashed at the statement he never finished. The sun rose in his cheeks. Skillio slapped his knee and laughed. "Then we must simply venture into Bahalia. Maybe you'll get lucky again. Maybe I will." "Over my bleached bones," Keir said shortly. "A fool follows his nose to all manner of trouble. Or he follows appendages I'm too decent to name anyway. Don't go thinking with your south brain, or you're likely to get us all killed." "But Keir," Skillio and Vaughn whined simultaneously like snot-nosed brats. "Must I remind you of the countless mages that have appeared out of nowhere when we thought we were safe? A festival means people. People mean trouble. I say we stay away from towns just as we've been doing," Keir argued. "We need not worry that Vaughn will be recognized. We can unmask him. Half the town is masquerading, so he will disappear gracefully into the fanciful flock," Skillio told her. "After all that's happened in the last few weeks, we deserve a break," Vaughn put in. Keir shrugged. She obviously was being overruled. "Fine. Just don't come crying to me if you die," she said, waving a hand in dismissal. "I won't die tonight, because you'll be there with me," Vaughn said confidently. You're gonna make me suffer through some snorefest. You'll probably have me dancing a happy jig and throwing pies at jesters as well, won't you? Skilio's face lit up. Splendid idea, Kier. With your skills, I bet you would master the targeting games in no time. I'll go to protect you, Stick, but I'll be damned if I'm going to waste your precious reserve funds on such ludicrous pleasures. If this trip to Aquiline takes as long as I suspect it will, we'll be needing all the Lorens we have just to eat, especially now that we've got an extra mouth to feed. Kier grumbled lightly and threw a dark glance Skilio's way. We'll be conservative, I promise, Vaughn assured her. Kier folded her arms and shrugged in submission. It was Vaughn's head, after all. If he wanted to risk it on some merry joyride, who was she to argue?